and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
John Hamlin, would you like to do our mission statement?
Sure. Serve with passion to ignite creativity, innovation, and excellence.
Thank you. And roll call, we are 7 board members here, and Brian, executive full team.
Yep, except Eric's not here.
Okay.
I don't know if it's just in restaurant.
Is he on or not? Is he on Zoom?
No.
Yep.
Oh, he's not.
DMX are on.
Okay. Excellent. And I'll look for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
I'll
You
say,
did.
Ben's motion and Jay's second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Move on to connection with the community, and first up is item A, board reports by high school student reps. Max, would you like to go first, please?
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Yeah, I can for sure start. Going on today or this Friday in the high school, we're having mid-quarter, so a lot of the high school students are kind of wrapping up this first part of the year and getting those grades in, and those will be finalized next week, I believe. And then I also wanted to end my portion of the report with just a thank you to all the staff members who helped out this morning. For anybody unaware, we had an issue this morning with Zoom where we were having to enter in passwords, which we hadn't had to do previously. But within 10 to 15 minutes, the high school staff was able to figure it out, and it worked seamlessly for the rest of the day. So I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who helped out with that. Maddie?
Thank you, Max.
Yeah, that was awesome that they fixed that so quick. I was even able to finish my first hour class. But for the seniors right now, we were off to a very slow start on the SEP, but now we're really starting to dive into it and get started and get back on track with the school year. Other than that, I know that all of the high school sports are on pause right now, but I know that many of them are having scheduled Zoom meetings where they talk about like workouts they're doing, game tape, or anything else related to that sport. And that's all we had.
Okay. Are there questions for Max or Maddie?
Max, could you just repeat the first thing that you talked about? Our speaker wasn't on very loud and I didn't catch that all.
Yeah, for sure. For the high school this week on Friday, we're having our mid-quarter. So it's kind of just like the spot where we can check in with teachers are able to check in with students and make sure everybody's on track. And then that students are getting in their work on time and things like that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Are there other questions for Max or Maddie? Thank you both for that report. Appreciate that. And moving on to correspondence. We've got one from Our Savior's Lutheran Church. It says, addressed to Brian Reber and Emily Cohn. Dear Brian and Emily, greetings. As summer is winding down, we offer you a very sincere thanks for your support of Feed Our Children with Salem. Once again, the needs of our community's children were met and met with generosity and care. You were an important part of that outreach. So thank you. We're grateful to you for your support of this outreach, and we offer you our thanks for your partnership with us. We simply cannot do this without you. May God bless you as you continue to serve our community. And Pastor Jonathan M. Schmidt, Angie Hunter, Director of Feed Our Children.
And Angie does a great deal amount of work to get those things organized. And Emily participated well with the food that we had. We're able to provide over the summer, but Angie does a fantastic job getting all that organized over the course of the summer. So thank you to them too.
I've seen her a couple of times at the store shopping for the food.
Yeah.
The big job.
Okay, and there's a thank you to the West Salem Board of Education from Colleen Miller. It says, West Salem School Board, thank you for the beautiful bouquet of purple flowers. Your thoughtfulness was truly appreciated. Family of Conrad Miller.
That's it, Father.
That's it for correspondence. Next is citizen participation at board meetings. Board policy 186, citizen wishes to address the board. It's required to start of the public comment section of the board meeting. And September 28th, we have first Tricia Jones. And as Pat mentioned, we've got some minutes for you to talk to us about.
I was told I could remove my mask while speaking, so I'm doing so. One, I'd like for all of you to see me and see who's speaking to you. Second one, I'd love for you to be able to hear me. Most of what I came here to say might be mute according to what I learned tonight when I got here and found out that this particular group isn't required to necessarily provide me any answers. You're just here to listen. So I guess for those of you who may be listening in from the outside, know that I'm asking the questions for our community, and I apologize if no one here responds. This is difficult. This group here, sitting here in front of me, you guys were elected. You were elected not to represent yourselves. You are elected to represent the people and the families whom you serve in our community. This is our parents and our children. You are here to represent what we want as much as what you might think we want. And I don't think you guys know what we want. I came in here tonight and I was met with, oh, we're in the same boat as you. Oh, we're as frustrated as you. What'd you say to me? I don't know, something like that. This is the group who can make that decision. Don't tell me you're as frustrated as I am as a parent. By the way, I have a 4th grader, a 2nd grader, and a kindergartner. You know how difficult that is to manage in my home by myself?
Tricia, I'm gonna have to ask you to lower your voice.
Okay, I will do that. Thank you. Sorry.
We are not gonna be yelled at.
I thought I was yelling with you because I thought you felt the same way I did. Sorry. Those of us parents who chose to send our kids to West Salem in-person school chose it because we thought you, as our representatives, would work your butts off to keep our kids in school. The people who are afraid of this virus and do not want their children in school are the ones who could choose virtual. All the people who are afraid of this thing, they were given options. Okay, so my questions. Raise your hand. I'm inviting you to personally come. I want one person to commit to coming to my house and monitoring. Not monitoring, just watch. Just watch what's going on. I have many more questions. I would really like to request at least 3 more minutes of your time.
I think that we've previously addressed some of your concerns, and we've heard what you've had to say tonight. We appreciate.
I don't think so, because you guys haven't answered my questions. You have not addressed my concerns. You have not answered any of my questions in any of my emails, which is why I came tonight.
I appreciate you coming tonight. We're gonna have to agree to disagree, and if your minutes are up, thank you very much.
Okay, parents, you've heard it. They don't really care about what we have to say.
Thank you, your time is up. Next up, we have Jennifer Black.
I have some of the same concerns. I wrote down exactly what I want to say. My questions come at the very end. My name is Jennifer Black. I represent our high school students that are trying to navigate this extremely difficult time called COVID and our current learning model. My daughter Helen is a very good student and will adjust to any circumstance that is put before her, but I cannot say the same for my 2 sons who have already graduated. One of them who is doing his best to maneuver through virtual classes in college. Just like my kids, when COVID hit and everything was shut down, I was forced to work from home and do all my meetings online. I lead large cross-functional teams in the development of new products And so working in an online environment is exceptionally difficult. I spent my first month being depressed with no schedule and trying to figure out how to navigate. So once I got a schedule, which I follow every day, I was able to maneuver and be effective. We have now been told that we can go back to work full time with full mask coverings and social distancing, but for many of us who have figured out how to work from home, we have chosen to continue to do so. I would expect that the kids who adjusted well in the spring and can learn in a completely virtual way would have chosen to attend the Cooley Region Virtual Academy. Helen openly admits that she will do okay in a virtual environment, but she stresses that she isn't learning as well as she would in a classroom, as she just doesn't retain it. She worries that this may be a problem for her future and what she intends to do after high school. I look at the job of a teacher or school district as critical, very similar to those of a doctor, nurse, or hospital. We depend on you to educate our children, much like we depend on a doctor or nurse to help us with our physical and mental wellness. We have CDC guidelines that if we follow, we should be able to do our jobs and reduce the likelihood of getting sick. In the hybrid model, half the kids were going to school with masks on, and because there were only half of them, social distancing was easier. Helen was excited to go to school on those days and said that her ability to learn was much higher. My problem begins on the days where there's independent learning. Helen doesn't get up until late, as for her, classes don't start until 1 o'clock. She isn't held accountable during those days, and she is only getting a few hours of class time. I question how much learning is actually getting done on those days, and for my sons, this would have been detrimental. If you are going to have kids do virtual learning, they need to have the same schedule that they have when they are in school. If a teacher can't teach, then maybe a solution is to ask students to volunteer and lead virtual Zoom study lessons. Maybe they can help some of their peers that struggle in the class, and this gives them the ability to practice leadership skills. If the school is struggling to figure some of this out, I'm sure there are community members that would be willing to help, me included. I have about 15 seconds more. Wrap it up quickly. My job is not unlike that of a teacher, as I have to lead large teams and do it virtually. I know that other schools such as Aquinas and Luther have figured out how to go back to in-classroom learning, and I'm disappointed that we haven't figured out how to do this more effectively so that our students have the structure that they need. I'm asking the district and board to start asking questions of those school districts and start asking for help from your district parents so that the 2020-2021 school year doesn't go down as a lost year for our students. I don't believe that this current model is fulfilling the needs of our students. Thank you. Thank you for your comments, Senator. Appreciate it. All right, next we'll move on to reports and district strategic initiatives by Business Operations Team and Superintendent. Any questions on those, or Ryan, do you have anything else to add to your report?
No, not right now, unless somebody has any questions for me based upon the report.
Anyone? Okay. All right, we'll move on to the consent agenda, which includes the minutes of the regular board meeting of September 14th, 2020, invoices to be paid, donations, co-curricular recommendations for high school, middle school, and elementary, and then hire a registered nurse. For donations, we have a donation from Kaylee Helgeson, donated approximately 75 face coverings to the high school. So thank you for that.
I'll make a motion to approve all of the items on the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Jane and a second by Tom. Is there any discussion?
Are we still scrolling donations on our electronic signs too?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, just like we have in years past.
Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carried. Next, move on to discuss, consider, and take action if appropriate regarding strategic initiatives. First is school board grants. There's attachment H in your packet. Where we're proposing a deadline of October 30th for grant requests.
Yeah, and in that grant request, I added a couple of bullets towards the bottom. They're italicized in there. Other than that, the board grants are the same as they have been in years past. Talking about looking for an enhanced instruction above and beyond the normal school supplies. So looking for this to be something unique. And so if we're going to ask for something in the board grant that's something unique above and beyond what we do with any normal supply money that we use within our buildings. Also, encouraging applicants by grade level or department to collaborate together, like in the PLC process, so they work together to put something out for our kids. In part of this process would be then the staff would take this, give it to the building administration. The building administration would look over the list and they sign off on it, and it would come to me, and then I bring it to the board grant committee.
So if the applications would be due by the 30th, when would we want to convene this group to review the applications?
Well, if we look at pulling out a calendar,
Because next summer we'll look for volunteers to review those grants. So.
well, if you want to look for volunteers, and I can get
Right.
those dates set.
Tim, who would have an interest in reviewing board grants for this year?
I'll do it.
I'll do it.
So
I've done it before.
Perfect.
Happy to help.
Okay.
we could do it either before the first board meeting in November, which would be November 9th, or we could do it towards that week of Thanksgiving break for the 23rd. I would say we probably stick with November 9th. So anything ordered, any grant awarded to a staff member, we could get moving on that sooner rather than later.
So they can possibly get an item for the Christmas.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Did you get that noted?
So the 9th.
So before our regular meeting, more than likely, is that okay with you, Eric?
Yeah.
Yes.
Robin?
So Jane, Robin, and Eric.
So it depends on the number of grants. It may depend on how much time or when you want to start, so
Okay,
I'll try to communicate with you.
sounds good.
Okay. Excellent. Any other questions on that? All right, next is item B, proposed 2021 budget, mill rate, and tax levy, and that's item I in your packet.
What you see in your packet is the required information that we need to publish in the newspaper, and before we meet again in October 14th in our business operations meeting, this will actually need to be published ahead of time. This is the required DPI information that all school districts do under the proposal level of it. So this is the first round. There's a few things that will still be in need to adjust it yet. We're still waiting on our student enrollment information, our equalized values, some other information from the state as far as our final aid payments, but this is what it looks like at this point in time. This is the summation of all of the funds for the school district, and you get to the last page, you'll see a proposed property tax levy. This is what it looks like at this point. There's still a few things that will change within this, but and this just shows what the years are from the 18-19 unaudited, 19-20, which the auditors don't finalize the audit report until the first part of December. So we just leave it unaudited at this point in time, and then our budget for the current 2021 year. Any questions on this?
Yes, on that.
Yep.
I don't see the proposed mill rate.
The proposed mill rate's not required to be posted into the newspaper at this point in time, but the mill rate at this point, where we feel we're landing at, was the $9.49. You'll see that but there's still
Right.
still some changes that we can make.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
I have a question that's somewhat related to how we come up with these numbers. I saw some articles regarding difficulty in counting number of kids. Did we experience that, or?
I'm gonna turn that over to Deanna, because
I
that's
know.
kind of her portion, but
No, they changed the recommendation of how to count them. So before it was the students had to be in the seats the Thursday, Friday, and third Friday count Thursday to Monday. any of those days. Now it's if they've attended before or after because of the virtual setting. So we worked together. Sean, myself, and Julie Conlow worked together, and we had no problems coming.
All right, that's good. Yep, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thanks. Move on to item C, and that's school calendar for 2021 school year. Attachment J in your packet.
Yeah. Do we need action on that since it's we published in the paper?
No, I don't. think
It
so.
was an information, so we
Thank you.
wanted your eyes to see it before we got published in the
Thank
paper.
Yep.
Yep. I put on here the 2021 calendar just to look at some of the upcoming dates between now and, as we're moving in. And part of this is looking at that October 14th early release date. Knowing that we haven't been in school right now due to the virtual learning and in effect that we get back into school sometime soon, I don't think it would be doing our families a very good service if we had an early release day on October 14th where the students come for half the day and then we turn around and send them home as we had normally scheduled. So my recommendation to the board is that we eliminate that early release day on October 14th and make that a regular learning day. We could look at the other dates, the other early release dates too at this point in time, but we don't know what it's going to be like. And if we need to come back and revisit those at a later time, then we can. So I would say for right now, I'm looking at a recommendation to keep that October 14th day a full day of learning.
Okay, but do nothing with the rest of the calendar at this point?
At this point in time, I would say we don't have to. We looked at a couple of those Fridays in October, but knowing that those are there and those are days when we look at a blended model, and then talking with both Mike and Ben, if we would look to move those to October days to like that week before Thanksgiving, that would interfere with the high school's blended learning model on those days. So right now, we just recommend moving that, eliminating that October 14th early release day.
All right.
Questions for administration on that? Do we want to take action?
Motion to eliminate the early release date on October 14th for the administration request.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. I have a second, a motion by Sean and a second by Jane. Is there any discussion?
I just have a question for
Yes.
Ryan. Ryan, you noted on the 2 Fridays in October. If we're in the hybrid model, we'll consider to be teaching those, because if I remember, we have the Fridays for helping students. So are they still gonna be, so the teachers know that they would be working on those days? Even though we haven't taken no school and
Just elementary and middle on the
no
23rd.
school for elementary and middle, and then no school
That
at
day
all
on,
for all students.
yeah, that day on October 30th, Ken, that's a staff and service day.
Okay.
So
Okay. Thanks for the clarification.
you bet.
Yep, is there any additional questions? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carried. Next up is item D, our West Salem decision matrix, and that's attachment K in your packet, and there's some follow-on information about the Minnesota and the Harvard model. So I asked this to get put on the agenda, for us to have a discussion about potentially moving to looking at municipality numbers as primary on our decision matrix as opposed to whole county numbers. You guys are all probably aware of what's been going on with the increase in cases at the 18 to 24-year-old level in the last couple weeks, and we've got some data on that. For the week of 9/14 through 9/20, the 0 to 17 age range COVID cases, total number was 17 cases. 18 to 24-year-old age range was 605 of a total of 778 cases, or 77.75%. And then 25 to 59 was 112 cases in that same time period. Using the model of Brad needing 35 cases per 1,000. Our West Salem data for the last couple weeks has been 22.6, 45.2, and 28.2. Compared to LaCrosse County at 21.2, 67.9, and 97 for the same 3-week periods.
Can you give them one more time?
Which one did you want? Our West Salem?
Oh, West Salem first.
Okay. So for 9/8, our number per 100,000 was 22.6. 15, it was 45.2. And for 9/22, it was 28.2.
And then the county?
The county for the same period was 21.2, 67.9, and 97.
And that's cases per 100,000, correct?
Yes, that was the number, so it appeared to normalize between the populations. I've also got it figured out on, like actual numbers of real people for the same time periods.
I think that's an important part of the data, because I think a lot of people think when you say 22.6 that means that's cases, and that's not entirely true. For normalizing the data, that's helpful, but when you look at actual cases and numbers of people ill in our community, I think the actual case value really highlights that it's pretty low risk in our.
Right, our last reporting date was 9/22, and that was 28.2 per 100,000, which equates to 2.48 actual people per day as far as the case.
And that's just our school district, correct?
That is
That would
West
be,
Salem address, so
that'd be
roughly,
the townships of West Salem.
Right, that's what I
Hamilton,
meant, our
Barry.
school district, and anybody that that lives within our borders is what I mean.
it's very close, because we've got some Greenfield and other Berry that might have a LaCrosse address, but I think it kind of washes out to about the same.
When they calculate the municipality numbers or the data, it goes based upon your address. So if your address says West Salem, then those numbers go to West Salem. If you would live, like when I lived up on the ridge, I had a LaCrosse address. So my numbers would have went to LaCrosse because I had a LaCrosse address.
So it goes by address, not district.
Goes by address.
Were you looking for something, Steve?
Well, it's on the agenda if you want to make a motion.
I
and then have
I will,
some
like,
discussion.
we will make a motion that the West Salem School District adopts based on the municipality numbers. And to add some common sense to that, I'm gonna put addition on it, because if one person, if we're looking at 5, is equivalent to 20. So in addition to that, we would have to exceed the higher of, and this is for the 7-day case rate, the higher of 8 persons or 4 households. So that if we had a family, we aren't gonna shut down the whole school or 2 families who have 5 kids, we're not gonna shut the whole school down. So I'm trying to put some common sense on, because of so many, so the rate would have to exceed the higher of 8 persons or 4 households. In keeping with that would have to be approved by our insurer and our legal. And I'm gonna say this, so that everyone knows. The reason we have to have it approved by that is because we have to stay insured and we have to have legal representation if we were to get sued, if someone chose to sue the school district, because we have to be fiduciary responsible for the whole community. So my motion is that we adopt the municipality rate with the caveat that the number would be for the 7-day primary would not exceed the higher of 8 persons or 4 households. Does anyone have any questions on how I made the motion?
8 persons
yeah, I'm not
outside
following
of the
that.
house, yeah, I don't
Yeah,
think.
so,
Because it's not gonna line up quite with what we'd be able.
well, the data would be by households, right? They report it that way also. Robin?
The data is reported cases per 100,000, doesn't matter if it's in the same household or not. So,
But I think we're shorting ourselves if we don't look at households for the fact that except
So
one
I-
family.
if I'm
Okay.
understanding you
Yeah.
correctly, the 8 cases or 4 households is more specific to our school, not to the municipality.
Well, that's the only records we would have would be the municipality.
So I mean, our school would have.
You're asking for
1,000
more
cases.
restrictive though than what the 35 per 100,000 allows. So,
Actually, no, because 8 persons would be equivalent to 160 people. Per 100,000, because again, 1 person on 5,000, so 1 is equivalent to 20 persons. We have to keep that in mind. That's why we have to have some common sense to it, because if we keep with the matrix we're using, 2 persons would trip it, because that would be 40 per 100,000.
No, we're not necessarily looking at, I don't think that's where you were going with this, but you know, I think, Beth, and I don't know, I mean, we've just got some recent information too from the county as far as triggers for classrooms and school buildings. Do you wanna share some of that information maybe at
Yeah,
this
that's
time?
before we,
Absolutely, actions. La Crosse County just released their thresholds for when a school building or a classroom will be shut down.
Here, Beth, just hold on a second here, we need to, before we have a discussion, we need to have a second on the motion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's my fault.
well, I would like to hear it, so I may rescind it. That's okay.
do you want to rescind?
Well, let's hear it.
Well, we can't hear it
Okay,
until
let's
we.
rescind it. I'll rescind it at this point.
Okay.
I'll make the motion.
So we have a motion on the table. Beth, would you like to offer some narrative?
If that's okay, yeah.
Thank you.
So La Crosse County Health Department does have threshold for closure for classroom triggers and for school triggers. Number 1, they say that it's an assessment of the situation. So each situation will determine it. It'll be case by case. Not a closure yet, but higher numbers. So we're looking at on any given reporting day, 10% of the COVID-like illness or influenza-like illness on any reporting day, which is on Wednesdays, or 20% of the student or the classroom on any non-reporting day, so Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. And it would be discretion of the staff and administration if the situation warrants. This can be done regardless of triggers of closing the classroom. The discussion to close a classroom will become when it's at 30% of the classroom per day in an individual classroom where those CLI or ILI, the COVID-like or the influenza-like illnesses, 3 consecutive days at 30% of those students, and the teacher, or 30% of the classroom is gone. That's for a classroom trigger. For a school trigger, the discussion to close school will be 20% per day of absences for 3 consecutive days. This is assessed by individual schools, the number of teachers and support staff that are out due to isolation, quarantine versus availability of substitutes can also warrant a closure of a school. So those are the 2, we have the classroom triggers, which is 30% per day for 3 consecutive days, or 20% per day for 3 consecutive days for an entire school. Is there any other questions regarding
Could you just
that?
back up? You initially said the classroom trigger 10% of COVID or flu-like illness. Did I miss that? Did I get that?
No, so I neglected to say that about, those get into more reporting of what I'm looking at daily as a school nurse under surveillance.
Oh,
So
okay.
as a school nurse, we are looking and tracking all absence data in all 3 of our buildings for staff and for students.
Okay.
So those are more for me to say, okay, we're getting into higher levels, so that 10 and 20% are where I'm talking with Ryan or the building principals and letting them know that we're getting close to those thresholds. But the actual threshold to close, where we will discuss, is gonna be 30% per day in an individual classroom for 3 consecutive days, or 20% of absences for 3 consecutive days in a school building. or if it would weigh on staff, teacher staff support that are out due to isolation or quarantine.
And that classroom trigger, that would shut down an individual classroom?
That is
or
correct,
grade?
yes, yeah, that's correct. So we would just close that classroom down because maybe we would see a higher number. Looking at COVID, it tends to be a very contagious type of illness. And so if one student may get it, we may see more of those students in there. So on average, we have about 20 students, 18 to 20 students in each of our classrooms in the elementary school. It varies in the middle school and high school.
Okay, and then do the numbers for school trigger, does that include the staff as well?
It would include the staff, yes, yes. So those 30% would not just be students, it would also be on staff as well.
That's been some of the cases with the surrounding districts that have had to go virtual. At this point in time, it's due to staff illness. So at those points in time, I mean, we can only the doors can only remain open if we have the adults within the buildings to do that. So in some of the cases where we've had closures around our communities or around our outlying areas, when those have happened, it's been due to the fact that they don't have subs. So if we don't have adults to teach in a room that day or for an extended period of time, that's when the schools would close down.
So Beth, I just want to clarify, so based on your numbers, West Salem could have, based on 1,800 kids, 360 kids out, we're still gonna be open.
If that's underneath the 20% or the 30%.
Well, that's 20%. Okay.
However, we also have to take into consideration our staffing as well and make sure that there wouldn't be an issue with staffing or any other type of things. And I will say that every situation that we've had, it's all been unique and on a case-by-case basis. But yes, that's it. I think that's what you're saying.
Well, and before we got to that number, we bump up against numbers on the matrix as far as case counts.
That is correct.
Well, but that was my question, do we have to worry about the case counts if we have this adopted?
I think you need to worry about both.
Yeah,
I think it would, and if I may, what you were saying, I understand what you were saying about 1 person equals 8. There are two different
It's
mathematical,
equals 20.
there's different mathematical equations that are going on. So I just want to make sure that we're making the data, we're understanding it correctly. But I do want to just say that it is important. I think that going and looking at the municipality is a good thing for us to do, but we cannot ignore our lacrosse numbers either, because we are a community that has people coming in and out of our community. Our students are working with other college students or being coached by college students or that 18 to 29-year-old demographic. So I do want us to be understanding that we are affected by it. We do see effects of that, and I don't want to ignore that statistic either.
Where the numbers that you're quoting, where is that coming from? Who gave them to you?
La Crosse County Health Department, and they gave them to all the schools in La Crosse County. So public or private schools are all
And then-
following that.
How does this guidance go along with what, let's say, Aquinas has done? Or, they've had to come up with something. Are you familiar? Is it pretty close or,
Aquinas did not have a threshold as far as I know. This is a threshold that La Crosse County just released last week, and they are asking for all public and private schools to follow this. We do have a threshold every year with any other communicable disease, especially influenza, norovirus, things like that. We've had those experiences in years past. And so I can't speak for Aquinas. I'm not exactly sure, but I'm gonna guess that they did not have a threshold. That's something that when I've spoken with other schools, they did not have that threshold, or if they were using one, it was for the influenza-like illness. So now I do know that they are involved with this with La Crosse County, because La Crosse County said that they're making a good effort to ask for, and I do believe Aquinas has usually done their surveillance every year. Not all private schools do their surveillance, but I believe that Aquinas has always been pretty good at that. So I hope that answered your question. I believe that they were following, I'm not sure what their grid is. I really don't know how they were doing it, but this threshold was released last week, and so Did that answer your question, Sean?
Did, thank you.
So does this include people in quarantine or only people who are COVID-like illness or influenza-like illness?
I'm gonna say it's gonna include isolation and quarantine and the illness as well. But I would have to ask La Crosse County Health Department for that clarification.
That will make a huge difference if we have one positive that quarantines 10 students with them.
Absolutely.
That we could have 3 positive, each student have 10 people quarantined, and we'll be over our limit with only 3 positive cases.
Yes, for a classroom, but not for the school.
But with very few positives, if you quarantine a large number of people with them, you could quickly get to where you're shutting down your schools for 5 to 6 positives that each have 10 students quarantined. Is my point. If you're counting quarantine students in the 20%. That's, I just wonder.
Well, and 10, I think is a low number if you're in a classroom of 20 kids.
We're looking now, if this is for 3 consecutive days, and if you have 3 consecutive days and it's something, big like that, then I think the 3 consecutive days is a key there. And if we're looking at a classroom or something like that, I think that minimizes, some of the effect of more people, so.
I'm going to guess that it's gonna include quarantine and isolation because we don't know if those students are ill or not. Isolation is gonna indicate that they're symptomatic, but at quarantine, they could become symptomatic at any time. So, I'm gonna bet that La Crosse County includes isolation and quarantine students in those numbers. And I will find that information out for sure for you and get that to you.
Can I get a point of clarification on the numbers? What are they? What do they mean? Are they guidelines from the county that they're asking all school districts within the county to consider, or are they the point at which the county is going to step in and close down a classroom or a school?
The county will not step in and close down. These are surveillance numbers. They may close down. I should reel that back. They can come and do that, but they're going to be working with the superintendent and the school nurses in order to surveil the data. So every day we're gonna be looking at these things by taking attendance, seeing who's sick, who's out for whatever reason. And the numbers are a threshold. They're a percentage and I don't know what they're based on, Eric. I really didn't ask that specific data. But I do know that every year we do have threshold data that we watch, and when we get to 5 or 10%, then I have certain things that are expected of me, like to notify the school, to send students home, to exclude students, whatever it might be. And this is what those thresholds are.
Sure.
If you would like me to get more information.
Nope, that answers my question. Thank you.
Okay.
We almost hit this a couple years back, right before we had a flu type outbreak at the elementary school, the norovirus, right before.
And we had 150 students in the elementary school.
So we were on the phone and back tracing, and so it'd be one of those
So it's
situations.
really at the point where the county's expecting.
They'd make a recommendation that we would do that, so they wouldn't do it, but they'd make a recommendation for any closures at that point in time.
I just worry a little bit about the quarantine kids being counted in, because in a classroom of 18, if you have 1 student that's positive and they quarantine 6 other students, you will shut down that class.
I think we can also look at it, it does say case by case basis, and there can be that thought process, the critical thinking and the rationale to go behind it. So it doesn't mean that the trigger means be all end all, that this would shut us down. But it also gives us some guidance that if we would have an illness and we need to shut it down now, we can also do that as well.
Right, to have some dates, some numbers to make the decision, and that's what we want.
Are there seating charts for each classroom that each kid will sit in every day? So you can track how many minutes they were in close proximity to a person that ends up, positive?
Yes.
Is that your?
We are recommending that at the high school as well. Yes, keep in mind that the high school kids move to a different room every 45 minutes.
Right.
But when they move in our building, they have a seating chart. So we would be able to go block by block and know exactly
Who was
where they
sitting
were.
where
Yep,
when?
absolutely.
But they're spaced out because we're in the blended learning where we're further than, we aren't in close, no 2 kids are closer than we're sitting here. So they're not in close proximity. We're using the social distancing guidelines. So it, depends. We've had to do contact tracing because we had a couple positive tests at the high school a couple weeks ago. and we didn't have kids who were in the rooms that were deemed to be exposed.
Heather, how was it in your classroom?
My classroom, when we are blended, they can socially distance parallel to one another, about 6 feet. They can socially distance perpendicular to one another, approximately 3 to 4 feet.
And how many are in your class?
If I was in full, I'd be around 25. That's a middle school number.
Right.
So we are able to socially distance for the most part in blended in the middle school.
Yes, Ken?
I first of all, I believe we have a board policy on number of sicknesses and that. Because I know what it regards flu and everything with a certain percentage, I know it's in the high school.
As far as closing down?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a board policy.
That's right. So we
I'm
get
not
that.
familiar with it, but.
On that. And then the question I had is, so I really appreciate the information. But are we looking to use two different matrices then?
No.
To decide? So are we gonna use the school matrices or are we gonna look to set something just for the county? Using the county numbers?
Okay, so in your packet,
I got it,
there's
yep.
West Salem motor learning decision matrix. What I would like us to consider doing is using municipal numbers. We need West Salem,
Okay.
which we have a population, what we talked about with West Salem addresses of 8810. That would be our primary metrics, and secondary metrics would be the county numbers.
And instead of going to the secondary matrix, I would say, the threshold is when we're doing in-person school, and it would be specific to that, so it really would not be guidance on whether to do in-person or not. It just gives us guidance that when we are in person, this gives us surveillance and data and statistics to follow and manage what illnesses we have in the school and when to then do a closure or think that we may be getting close to a closure.
So let's say, Beth, that we were gonna adopt this today. Where would we be? Where would we have our students? If we went by these numbers today, would we be in blended? Where would we be?
We would, if
In, out,
you follow what the matrix is right now, if we were to go off of the number that was provided to us last Thursday of the 28.2, I believe.
Yep.
We would look at this matrix and 28.2 would fall in the orange, which would mean that we would be in person 4K through 5, and then we'd be blended 6 through 12.
So if our number is similar on Wednesday or Thursday morning recording, whenever we get it, that would give us the potential to be in classroom next week.
Blended.
Assuming we were at 28.2 again next week.
612 blended.
But the problem I have with it is that's 3 persons were okay, 4 were in red.
No.
I don't.
Yes.
So it's a
Okay.
rolling 7-day average.
Right, but I'm looking at this primary matrix. 8810 divided by 100,000 is 11.5 persons for every one because of our size. So you'll have to take the 11.5 times how many cases we have in our municipality to get to this number.
That's new cases per day.
That's new cases per day.
It's not rolling numbers of positives, it's rolling.
New cases per day.
7-day case rate per 100,000.
It's new cases diagnosed.
Okay.
So if you're diagnosing 3 a day for a rolling 7 days, you would be diagnosing 21 new cases
Perfect.
in that 7 days.
Okay.
Which
So we'd have
for
to have
our
21,
population of 8,810 would be a large number.
Okay.
And it's more than that, just to remember that 8810 is just people that have a West Salem behind
Right,
their
'cause I
address.
have a lacrosse hat.
Yeah.
And you, not you.
Not anymore.
Really,
I
you're
used
the
to.
red you were.
Yeah.
So, okay. So would we have a secondary metrics then? Would we still use the secondary metrics to trip us up into that using lacrosse?
Well, the county guidelines are things that it normally would happen regardless of anything, because it's monitoring the health that you have within your buildings. So it's not just specifically following one guideline or another, and you don't have 2 matrices. That's what their guidelines are as far as if there would be illness within a building, regardless if it be COVID or norovirus or influenza, those would be things that would happen. So that's a secondary layer to what a metric would be.
We'd be using the municipality numbers as our decision on whether school is open or closed. And then we would just be monitoring the county numbers for what they're doing as far as trends.
So I will make the motion that we use our municipality numbers.
Okay.
I'll second that.
All right, I have a motion by Ken, a second by Tom. Is there any discussion? And I'm gonna, Beth, you wanted to.
I just want to make sure that Ken has seen the map of across county with the different municipalities that have been spread out, just to make sure that you have seen that, where West Salem might be, Berry, Hamilton, Bangor, Rockland, and then La Crosse on Last Woman. Just to help you understand, I just want to make sure that it seems like if you saw that visual, then it might be better, okay.
So it's the one on the
It's
county website.
5462.
Punch it in.
Yes.
And I have talked with La Crosse County, and it was difficult for them to bring it to school district, so they used census tract, which brought it down to the address. Sorry.
I have a couple of questions.
Yes, John.
So based upon this, let's just say there was an outbreak within the walls of Cooley Christian. That's within our West Salem that could potentially shut us down as well, correct?
If the outbreak is people that live in a West Salem address, then yes.
Okay, got it. Number two, is there precedence for using local municipality numbers from around our area? I've heard rumors that Bangor did do this. Do you know that?
Bangor adopted following their municipality numbers last Wednesday at their board meeting.
Okay, have you been in contact with any of the superintendents from the
La Crosse on Alaska, Holman.
Yeah.
La Crosse is living it.
Yeah.
So,
They don't want their.
there's been, we've talked about it, but at this point, there hasn't been another district that's talked about moving to strictly municipality numbers.
And then one more, if I may, please.
Yes, certainly.
We were discussing the age groups that seem to be at the highest risk. Is there a way that we can minimize the exposure of our school district, our staff, our students to those? So for example, how many student teachers do we have coming in from the local universities? Do we know?
I think there's 3 at the elementary school, 2 at the middle school, and then there's
Okay, so
none over there.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just saying 0 in high school.
Okay, so we have a handful.
Yes.
Is there a way that they can zoom in and not come in at the current time?
I know that, and I think Tammy sat in a meeting with Dr. Chandler from UWL. I know Beth was in that meeting, and I believe Ben may have been in that meeting as well. I don't know if you were or not, but they talked about the protocols that they have the student teachers under right now.
And when they come in our buildings, they have to get their temperature taken before they even come through the doors and sign in, so.
And you're comfortable with?
We're
the way it
heavily
is?
monitoring, yes, and they are under very strict guidelines. I mean, not to say, all of this is
Right.
what it is, but
I would be more concerned for our high school students who work and head out and do intermingle with students, that they would bring that back into our buildings more so than the student teachers. The student teachers are, like we said, Dr. Chandler is making sure that they are putting a lot of enforcement in what they're doing outside of their extracurricular activity to make sure that they do not bring illness into our buildings or do whatever they can to lower that risk.
With the other districts that I've spoken to around the area, just trying to gain more information and whatnot. Students that have tested positive, that it hasn't been traced to what's going on within the buildings, the mitigation strategies that are going on in the buildings as far as face masking, hand hygiene, social distancing, and even with staff members in other buildings. A lot of that coming down to what they do once they exit the building and what they do in their free time. And obviously I think why you see some of the lower numbers at the elementary schools, because when elementary school kids get done with school, what do? They go home.
As the older that you get, then that doesn't happen as much. And that's where, students happen to pick that up, and those things are brought back at that point in time.
I met with any college student that was coming into my building on a Zoom meeting, and I can tell you that I was very blunt with my expectations for them.
I met with a clinical student today as well. I don't have a student teacher, but I have a clinical, and he met Coach Malat instead of Principal Malat. So yes, we're very
So to
blunt.
follow up with Sean's comment, at the high school, are we making, because they are the highest risk group, are we keeping them out of the elementary school and the middle school for interaction too? So that if we had to, we could close down the high school and keep the elementary and the middle school?
Yeah, they only go to one building.
I just, because we've done a good job in the past of intermingling them. and I
Are you
think
talking
that's
our
what-
own students, Ken?
Our own students.
Your high school students going into the.
Up to this point, yeah, because we've only been here for 4 days.
Right, but I
yeah,
mean.
I think that's the plan, yes.
I think we need to make sure we do that.
But if they
It's
ride
always
the
been a good
bus,
thing in the
I mean,
past.
if they choose to ride the bus, then that's,
I agree.
and we've been very upfront about that.
Yeah. Okay.
So, go ahead.
Just for clarification, we're gonna be using our municipality numbers on top of the county recommendations for the percent and everything, which indicate our schools would be open. Is that correct? Because if we're at 28.2 as of the 22nd,
But the 35 is our school district. It's the blend of the Harvard model and the Minnesota model, so that's
well,
not.
no, what I'm wondering, what Ken's proposing, because if we're gonna use the municipality numbers
Correct.
on
So-
top of the county percentages,
So
to
are
me,
you
that's
talking
in,
about the positivity test ratio?
well, we're looking at 28.2, which then would fall into the orange, because Jane asked for clarification on that, so that's telling me our schools would be open.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, that's all I wanted.
Okay, great.
Okay.
I was not great with the big answer.
Just verification.
And I want to verify that you will check with our insurers and legal. Perfect.
One quick down with your name right on it, Ken, you'll be the first person I contact
But
once
we
you find
have
out
to
that
drop the
information.
7-day positive test ratio where it's gonna flip us into the second of our primary metrics. We're going to have to drop that unless we're going to use it specific to our municipality also. But the county does not report how many tests they do per municipality, they only report it per county. So we have no way of figuring out per municipality what our positive test ratio is because we don't know how many tests
Great,
they've
so
done.
with the motion and the second that we're gonna vote on in a minute. Using our municipality numbers, that would, our primary metrics then would be our 7-day case rate per 100,000 and our case rate trend, because those we would be able to look at a municipal level. And then positive test ratio and 7-day origin could be watch metrics under secondary.
And so for my clarification, if either of them are in a red, are we not, or if we have a red and an orange, are we okay?
To me, I'd say we'd monitor it and we'd see what the feel of the temperature is of what's going on at that point in time. I mean,
Because my thought is it could be increasing even though it's below 35.
but if we're not, the primary kicker, to me, if, as we've looked at this all the way up to this point and following all the data, the primary kicker has been that case rate. So if you exceed that case rate, then that would be your trump card per se, talking euchre. Going through with those things, and you would look at the case rate trend afterwards.
Thank you.
Everybody done?
so-
I have a question, I have a comment.
All right,
Usually, I guess I'm just wondering, usually this is something that we would take recommendation from the administration on, not that we would be making the recommendation. So Ryan, is this something that you are comfortable recommending that we do for our district? Because you're the guy at the top, we're not.
No, we're at the top.
the 7 of us, we make a motion. and-
But usually we follow administration, they don't follow law. I mean, I have to know that he's comfortable with it or I'm not.
as we look at it, okay, I think it's obvious to say that we do not live in a vacuum. Okay, we live in West Salem, Wisconsin, which is on the outside of the city of La Crosse, which is right next to the Unalaska and Holman and whatnot. And I think it's, we have people within this room that don't reside within our school district, and they have a spouse. Okay, we can just even a spouse that works in another school district or in another facility. And so I think overall, to think that we're safe within our municipality, I think is a false premise. With that being said, though, I mean, it's if we were able to get our kids back, and I have 3 kids that are learning virtually at home as well, I think we know probably what's best for our kids is to have them in our buildings and learning from our staff. But I think there's a lot more information I'd like to know. I know other districts are doing this way outside of our county. Sparta's doing this right now. And they just shut down here this week. So if this would be something that we would do, I mean, there's things that we're going to have to follow, and things aren't going to be hard and fast. And I think what we don't want to do is for our families, we don't want to be flip-flopping as some of the headlines show, and we don't want to be on again, off again. That's not something that I want to do, and I don't want to put our families through that. Is it something that other people are trying? Yes. Is it something that I've completely studied on, looking strictly at municipality data? No. Is it something that we could do? If we get told to do it, yeah, we'll do it.
So yes or no, you're comfortable or you're not? I have to know before I make a vote. You're the head of our district.
We're going to be waiting a long time. Okay, we're going to be waiting a long time with the way the numbers are. And I know other districts are going to be waiting a long time as well.
That said, I don't think we should lull ourselves into thinking that by using local data that we're gonna be open from now until the end of the school year, because no one can guarantee that. So this is a way for us to try to get our kids back in person where we know that they learn best and our teachers teach best. So with that said, I have a motion and a second. Is there any additional discussion? Okay, excellent. I'm gonna take a voice vote. Let's start with Eric.
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Robin?
Aye.
Ken?
Aye.
Jane?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion carried.
A couple of things of clarification now. Okay, just to be clear on some things. Now, municipality data does not come out at the same time that all the other data does. And we've communicated to our families that the decision will be made by the end of the day on Wednesday. With the time lapse with the municipality data, I couldn't guarantee any decision or any communication out to families before noon on a Thursday. So case in point, there wouldn't be a decision made of whether or not we would be back in person or not next week until Thursday at noon. And so, I mean, that job of that communication is up to me, but there needs to be the understanding of the fact of people may not know until, and I've been talking with the county and, looking at some of these things. They have some things within the system that they're looking to update. They're hoping that those updates will come in the next 2 to 4 weeks. And if that happens, maybe they can get out sooner, but municipality data is not going to be out on a Wednesday at 2 o'clock like the other data has been. So there'd be a delay in any of that communication.
So then what we should do is just send reference to all the parents that it changes to Thursday.
Yep.
Exactly.
It's that simple.
Okay.
Over communicate.
So the second point I want to bring up now is, we're looking at, so we're waiting on Thursday for a decision of what the numbers would be. We, up to this point, we have our co-curriculars that have been on pushed delay Okay, we've been on pause. And I guess my recommendation, or that I'm asking for the board's approval on, is that bearing the numbers that come out Thursday morning, if we're making a determination at that point that we're gonna come back to school on Monday, October 5th, that we allow the high school co-curriculars to start participating and practicing Thursday afternoon.
And actually, my recommendation, and because I think we're still on it, I would actually make a motion, knowing that we're in Orange Day, that we allow co-curriculars to start tomorrow if coaches would like.
I would agree with
make
that.
that as a motion.
So I don't think I can take that motion now
It's
because
part of the decision matrix.
it's,
That's, I see it as part of it.
I don't believe that's accurate.
My only concern with that is that then on Thursday it comes out that we're higher, we will have literally one day of practicing and have to shut it down.
Right.
So I would say wait one day, take Thursday's data, which will predict what we're doing next year and start, or sorry, next week, and then start it on Thursday if possible.
That feels like a.
Because if we would start, if we would just say, all right, we're gonna go tomorrow.
Right.
And Thursday comes out and we're above 35. Then you brought the kids back, you let them intermingle and practice for 2 days, and then you're saying, okay, we're not back next week, we're virtual, so we're not doing anything. I would say, and I don't know if Mike can speak more to this, but I can, as looking as a previous coach, and Ben's a coach as well, but if we knew that we could have an opportunity to compete next week and we had Thursday, Friday to get together and practice, I think waiting that extra day to see if everything goes in that direction would be worth it.
If we can't have kids in school tomorrow, we can't have kids doing sports until we have our numbers out.
The kids are meeting virtual, we heard it tonight from our students already. I would like to give them every opportunity to get back to some normalcy.
That's why I'm saying we wait for the numbers on Thursday, and if we have the numbers on Thursday.
Make sure they're
we'll
safe
come
doing
back.
it.
You're talking about a couple of days if that's the case, so.
I'm asking if you're okay with that, so I can tell the high school that if we're gonna be in school next week, that they can, once we know what that decision's gonna be on Thursday, that they can be in contact with the coaches and advisors at the high school and allow the kids to do those activities starting Thursday after school.
I say that, I agree. I don't, they shouldn't do it before a decision's made, before the numbers are out. They need to wait till Thursday at noon.
I guess we have to decide, I made a motion, if you're gonna accept it or not, if it's on the agenda, that's up to you.
Don't think I can,
Okay.
so I'm glad that one. But I'm seeing some head nodding for if we're coming back to school on Monday, that practice on Thursday would be okay.
I think it'd be part of the communication that you would send out Thursday afternoon. All part of that same communication.
Okay. Well,
that'd be my take.
I mean, clearly, we don't have a different matrix for sports or instruction, right? It's one for everything, so either we're in or we're out. Red, orange, green, purple, whatever.
On the flip side of that, if we're in hybrid and it flips to red, are we gonna still allow sports then Thursday and Friday, planning to be red and Monday and not be back in school?
I would say we conduct it like we have before and we finish off the week.
Okay.
I mean, once you make a commitment, and part of that's gonna be around the communication that I will start to give to our families as well when those announcements are made, and our staff. But once you start a week, you finish the week. You wouldn't drop a dime unless there'd be a direction given by the county, or we have an outbreak and they say that you need to close down immediately.
So this week will be an exception to what will happen in the future. Is what
Yes.
I'm hearing,
Yeah.
correct?
And you will send communication out.
Wait, I'm confused on that.
I think what she means by an exception, meaning that we would open up and we would have kids come in to participate in co-curriculars Thursday, Friday, knowing that it's the exception to the rule that we'd finish off the week. So if we're making the determination that we're gonna come back to school next week, that we're making the exception that this week we're gonna have kids come back in.
Right.
Correct.
Yes.
But let's just, 3 weeks from now, we close down, and then the following week on Thursday, they say we're in orange again the following week. We will follow protocol to favor in the best interest of the student in all cases.
Yeah.
So we'd open up early, but we'd shut down late, basically.
Yes.
Okay, that's what you and I talked about previously.
Yep.
Okay, so I think you got your answer. So,
I got the answer.
all right. Moving on, that will end our live stream session and we'll take a 5-minute recess and reconvene with our board development.
Notification tomorrow that you'll be sending out more information Thursday at noon.